Hello and welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. I'm Tim, as always, joined by my partner Brett from Skillwork. And we are thrilled today to have our friend, good friend of the company and personal friend, Robb Clemans here. And Robb is a expert. We don't use that term too generously, but in this case it's apt. So Robb is an expert in the field of a lot of organizational development, leadership, but specifically change management. As a matter of fact, Robb came into our company, 6 months ago when we were embarking on a big change at our organization. He came in and taught our whole leadership team about what it looks like to go through a big change. And there's a whole science, a discipline, a little bit psychological, a little bit organizational, a little bit process. And we learned a great deal. And we're just thrilled to have Robb here. He's got a wealth of experience in leadership and development, training. And currently, you are the manager of organizational development, or is that correct?
Yep.
At
Exactly
Werner,
right. Yep.
Werner Enterprise, a big trucking company, and here locally as well. So, Robb, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Skillwork Forum.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on here. I'm excited to talk to you guys, and I feel the pressure with the introduction, man. I better know something.
Yeah, you're an expert, right? Good thing we're picking your brain.
Love this topic.
Because if we were picking our brain, we'd be over already. So we don't have a lot.
I love this topic, so we'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
Awesome. So let's get jumping in.
Yeah, thanks, Robb. Thanks for joining us. So, as Tim just said, you're a change management, organizational development expert. And I think that's a true statement. So maybe share with the folks listening, what exactly does that mean? And in your current role, how are you utilizing that?
Yeah. So, organizational change management. So when you think about change management, it's a really kind of a hot term right now. And it's interesting because I think there's a lot of interpretations of what it really can look like. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those intricacies about that. But at its core, change management, it deals with the people side of change, right? So as we're going through different initiatives, whether it's software or whether it's people related, it's who's impacted, how are they impacted, and really creating a strategy around keeping them on board. I mean, the goal with change management is to get as many people across the finish line as possible, right? That's kind of what change management is. How I'm using it in my role right now. Yeah, Warner is a good sized company, and so we have multiple initiatives that are going on right now at the same time. So we have actually a team. I'm part of a OCM team, Organizational Change Management, OCM team. Those are all three, well, the two of them are all three technology related. One has to do with kind of an acquisition, which is an interesting how change management plays out with that as well. But
That's really interesting. I mean, that company, obviously successful. They've invested in a whole team that focuses on change management. And you're right, it's something that people are starting to wake up to a little bit. And I think it's interesting that you said it's about getting people on board.
Yep.
Right now, we asked you to come and help us because at Skillwork, at our core, we're a staffing company, but we use a lot of technology. And so we're in the middle of this big change. Our whole productivity suite, technology stack, we're changing it. For us, it's changing the engine of race cars that's going around the track. It's a big deal. But at the end of the day, we have to get people to buy into that, user acceptance. So
it's the people part of it that make it come to life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it could be the best technology in the world, right? So how do you get a company ready for like a big change? How do you assess? And you said it, Robb.
Okay.
You talked about, getting the company ready for change. How do you know if you're like, okay, everybody's ready, let's go?
Yep. One, intentionality. And I think that's throughout. Intentionality and communication are two things that I think are just huge throughout. And so I think that there's just different ways you can do that on it, Tim. And one of the ways to be intentional is just get in front of your people. You can do that through surveys, and you can ask them some questions and find out where their head's at in general with change. You can find out where they're at with a specific change and how excited they are for the change. And you can assess things there, sit with them, and in focus group. Even as something too, just to talk about where things are at, where things are going, and what change is needed. And again, you can speak very specific to a change, or you can speak in general to the fact that, hey, we've been this size for years, or we've done this thing for years, and we have an opportunity to grow and do something a little bit differently, and we want to make sure that our people are on board. Where are you at with things? So you can come up with some questions there, ask them. But then also, I think polls, you can do. Those are all just three really tangible things you could probably do with people.
So kind of assess where people's mind is and where their level of acceptance or readiness for taking on a big change.
One of the big things, though, that I really resonates with me is outside of those tangible things, a little harder, but what's the culture? Let's bring culture into it. Like, what's the culture around this? What's the engagement with leaders, with the teams? What's the communication usually look like? How has change been handled in the past? Has it been a culture where, hey, we introduce change and right away employees relate that to pain, then they're probably not really ready for more change. But if they know that, hey, I'm supported or communicated, if things are communicated well, things are organized or structured, I know what's going on, everything is very clear to me, then they're probably more apt to want to get involved and
it's interesting
be a
that
part of it.
everything always kind of comes back to culture, right? And setting the pace.
It does. Yeah, it's hard to take a bad culture and it's probably not going to go well. But once you've assessed, Rob, in your experience, once you've assessed, hey, here we are, we're going forward in this, we think the team is ready, then there becomes a process or a strategy then in that. So maybe walk through what's that look like. Now we've decided we think they're as ready as they're going to get. Now we're going forward. What's the level of communication, all the different strategies that then as you begin to implement.
If you remember our time together, the biggest questions that anybody that's going to be going through change, and it could be your leadership, it can be end users, whatever you want to, whoever you want to insert there, is they want to know, why are we changing? What's changing? Why are we changing now? What's the risk of not changing? Who's impacted? And even more specifically on that, how does it impact me individually? That whole with them. They want to know those type of things.
Meaning, what's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Yeah, they want to know. A personal thing, like when change is introduced, something else we talked about is that it's completely normal for some level of resistance to take place with the individuals. And again, it could be even as you guys, if you're introducing change in the business, you might have some resistance as you start thinking about, what we have to do, the business is at, what it needs, and so we really need to think about doing this. You might find yourself through it. So it's very common for people to have resistance to change, but those questions, why now? What if we don't change? What's the risk of not change? Of changing? How does it impact me? If we don't get those questions answered from the get-go, then we're going to increase the probability of change, resistance within the organization, and then we're fighting a whole different battle.
Yeah, I think statistics are kind of staggering when the amount of significant organizational process people changes that fail. Most fail.
Yeah.
And it's usually because of the user acceptance isn't there.
Yep.
And I think getting back to the culture question, Brett, the idea is like if you haven't fostered a culture where we're open to people asking questions and hearing them,
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise we'll walk into a room and people will tell us exactly what we want to hear.
Yep.
But we're not going to hear the ground truth, and all of a sudden we're going to be 8 months later wondering why did we spend all this money and we didn't get the change we wanted.
That's a great point. So there can be, two things really that pop in my mind when you say that, Tim, is that one, you're not getting, they don't feel safe in order to give you a true answer. And so you have that aspect going on, which you mentioned. But I think from a leadership standpoint, and I think part of why a lot of that change fails, our change management fails, is a lot of assumptions. We're going to do this. I told somebody we're doing this. They're on board. There's an assumption that they're on board without taking the time to find out.
Or even saying, you guys need to get on board.
Well, that's the extreme. That's the extreme. This is where we're going. Yeah, if you don't like it, there's the door.
I was in the military, and we had no problem with change management there. Actually, we did, because there was just passive-aggressive resistance.
Yeah. It's harder. I think it's probably harder to just leave the military than it is a job if you don't like it, right?
Yeah, it's a little harder. Yeah, you get on board.
Yeah. So I mean, in the end, again, you want as many of your, hopefully, you want as many of your people to get across the finish line as possible with whatever change you're doing. And if that's the case, then you need to do some things intentionally up front.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I always remember. I remember a wide variety of things when we went through that change management with you. I thought it was really insightful things, but I think one of the big things that always, still to this day, sticks with me is when we're communicating something to a team, like we're going to do this, we're going to change this, I think they're listening to what I'm saying. They are immediately thinking about how it impacts them.
Yeah.
And it becomes
100%.
personal for all of us.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of back up and realize that we got to help them understand that. We got to think. So I'm assuming the obvious is in this is it's just a, like you said, continuous communication, continuous update, answer all those why questions. Why are we doing this type of thing? So
such a great point that you bring up there, Brett. Yeah, because it goes back to the assumption we covered it in our meeting. If it's a change that it truly impacts somebody pretty significantly, and they're not sure, well, do I have a job, or do I have a different role? What's going on? Am I moving to another manager? Those are all things that they're thinking about while you're talking. You're sharing the details of the change,
And they're just nodding.
Yeah, maybe they're just kind of. But they're not paying attention to you. And so if that's your only time you're communicating to them, it means obviously they're not going to get the right message, the real message, and you're going to have a hard time, because you're going to assume that the message was clear. You're going to continue to go on with the change management plan, and they're going to be left in the dust because they're thinking we're going a different direction that we're really not going. And so we talked about in that training that the kind of rule of thumb is communicate those key messages for sure 7 times in 7 different ways. So what kind of avenues do you have available to you, whether it's through paychecks or whether it's through email or in person, whatever the case may be, but get creative on how many different ways we can get a key message across to make sure that if they heard that the first time and it's wrong, that the second time they're like, wait a minute, what? Okay. Oh, it's not what I was thinking of. It's okay. It's this. Okay. Now I might have a little bit higher desire to get behind change where initially I might have been resistant.
It's interesting because in our business, we talk to, we're looking and vetting candidates and bringing them on board. And our, in this case, like our recruiters or even our client managers, we'll talk to them and give them the message. We even have, it's recorded. I went over these things specifically, but you think, well, I said it, so therefore they heard it. And you got to say it multiple times because you have no idea where that other person's brain is. And I know if it's me, I can be looking at you all day long, but if I'm not, my brain could be somewhere else. So that's great. 7 times you need to communicate it. Yeah, at least.
Yeah, and you make me think of something else too, as far as like how do you check for change readiness in that situation? Maybe you give them quote unquote an assignment after you communicate with something, a change to them. Maybe ask them questions about like, hey, I want you to write down 3 ways that you see this change impacting you or helping you do your job better or whatever it is, but you're going to know they have to respond to it when you check their work, if you will, and you can say, okay, they're on track or they're not on track. That could give you another way to coach them, engage with them, and be intentional and coach them.
Let's take a different tack. I'm sitting here thinking that today's culture, everything is like on it now. Change happens now, and get on Amazon. I can get it ordered in the next 10 minutes and have it there tomorrow. I mean, the idea, we even talk about failing fast.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you pull the plug too soon on change and recognize that you got to stay with this, and don't pull the plug too soon. And assume it's a failure. It didn't work.
Yeah. Tim, that is huge. That's one thing that I think is a pitfall, challenge for leaders, especially when we're living in this world that everything's moving so quick and everything else. And because change management is a hot topic right now, one of the challenges of people not truly understanding it takes time. I'll give you probably one that we can all relate to because I know a little bit about you guys. If you're trying to lose weight or if you're trying to get ready for a marathon, whatever, it's because you go out one day and you run a few, not for me would be run a few miles, but Brett, if you run a few miles, that doesn't mean you're ready for the Boston Marathon. It takes time. Yep. Good change takes time. And I just think in this world we live in today that there's some of the failure that you're talking about, Tim, is that companies, leaders, they just aren't willing to give it the time. And they might even say, I don't have the time for this. We're changing. This is what we're doing. People need to get on board. That's it. It's like, it's great. You're the leader and you can do that. Don't expect people to be following you. Yeah. People that, again, are going to be carrying this out for you and making this a success. I hope you understand it as a leader because you're probably going to be the one doing it because people aren't going to be probably behind you carrying out those tasks.
Well, is the skilled labor shortage hurting your company's bottom line? Skillwork is the premier staffing agency focusing exclusively on skilled labor. Our team of highly skilled workers augments your existing teams for elevated impact and decreased downtime. Partnering with hundreds of facilities in more than 30 states, we deploy our traveling industrial technicians to work for you on a contract basis. Our philosophy is simple: to honor God in all we do, bring respect back to the skilled trades, and positively impact those around us. For more information on how Skillwork can deliver the top labor talent you need, visit skillwork.com or call us at 402-447-7058. Call us today to see how Skillwork can work for you.
Yeah, I think this is something you do really well, Brad, is the idea of, we have to, we think about things and we vet them before we go forward with them. So we're bought in, and we believe in it, and it's easier to see difficult things through when you believe in something rather than like, well, let's give it a try.
Yeah, been around enough leaders who you can tell they listened to a podcast over the weekend, or they read a book or
Wait a
something.
minute, hitting too close to home.
Every Monday, it's something, type of
That
thing.
sounds like they've been listening to you and me talking.
Yeah, the risk with me is because I process it and I think about a lot of things, and most of them never make the table discussion because I decide they're a bad idea before they do. But the risk in that is that sometimes I get too far down, and now I'm not as open to input because I've got this figured out. So there's a little risk to both, but I think it's better to bake it a little bit. What's some of you're talking about giving up too soon types of things, but what are some of the negative consequences to failed change because you've abandoned too quickly, or you just we just didn't handle this correctly? I mean, what, as you've seen, whether it's to culture or whatever, what's the negative impact of not handling it well?
Definitely the culture, because you're trying to create a culture that we don't handle change well. So that talk about before, what's your past experience and what are the people that are working for you, like what are they going to say? Like your company goes through change. How do you feel when you go through change? If they're saying it's painful, it's confusing, it drives me crazy, no one knows what they're doing, you start creating those type of things versus what you want them to hear is, I was communicated to over and over again. I knew exactly each step that was happening. Felt well supported. I had the training I needed. I had everything else to make me successful for this. That's what you want. So I think the negative aspect is people just not being in the know, not being supported, not feeling set up for success, and just having a poor opinion about change, or maybe even worse than that, just kind of painful opinion about it. Hurts. You go through change, it hurts because it always impacts me, and I'm up at night and at home, and it's like I don't like it.
Yeah, I think of an experience where I was leading a big change, an organizational change, and got pockets of resistance across the organization, and trying to figure out why that was. And I think some of the honest feedback was, we've seen this stuff come and go. All we have to do is wait you out, and we'll be able to keep doing things the way we always have.
Yeah.
So this organization had developed a culture of, it's the soup of the day. Don't worry about it. Just nod along, and we can keep doing the way things we always have. So there's that mentality of like, no, we're not doing this.
I'm going to tie that in. Hopefully I can remember all this. I can tie this in with something you said to you, Brett, and that is, with change, I mean, talk about it takes time to do a change, to go through a change successfully. But that doesn't mean that the end users, your employees, are the ones that are dictating the pace. It's like, okay, we're always allowing them to say we're ready or not ready. There's some real consequences sometimes to saying, hey, this change is, we're going to go live on this date. And there could be some real consequences. Like if we don't do that, then we're on the hook for this amount of money for another year because of a subscription or whatever, because we weren't able to successfully close the loop and go live on here, which is going to save us money, go in a whole different direction. And so with that, and when I'm tying back into what you said, hopefully here, Tim, is that you need to have a well thought out strategy of like what you're doing, and you can even communicate that with them so that those employees that are saying, hey, we've seen this happen before, we just got to wait you out. They can see that, hey, this is a strategy. This is what we're accomplishing from here to here. We know where we're going, and we can see that there is an actual end date here. And so it's not a matter of waiting you out, because this is happening here at this time in the future. We are going live, and this is how this is our strategy as we back up from that go live date. This is how we're setting you up for success again each month, week, or whatever, by covering these topics or doing these things.
Yeah, we're kind of proponents of let's put a milestone, go live date.
Yeah.
So that it becomes intangible, and you work back from that. So.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a balance there. Like we want to we want you to be ready, but there is a point where it's like, we also need you to get on board, make a decision. We need you to get on board or whatever, because we can't drag this out.
Yeah, I think you just have to be intentional about it. So I wanted to ask a question. I know we're kind of running short of time, but I'm fascinated about the whole neuroscience, the psychology behind people. And you talked about their brain's kicking in.
Yeah.
What's going on there with us that we just bristle at somebody saying, even like, I have had to take a new way to work these days because they're doing construction. It's like,
oh my gosh,
freaking me out here,
let's not talk about construction. I'm having trouble with that change.
And my brain for like a week straight, I kept going down the road that I knew was like,
yeah.
What is it about our brains?
I'm not a doctor, but
But you play one.
But I grew up being a big MASH fan. That dates me. It's really interesting. There's a lot going on in the brain, I think. And one of the things that I read recently talked about how going through like a change in your brain, like it causes pain. And they went on to say, even to the point of almost like getting punched or breaking a bone, which I think is wow. That took me back a little bit. I thought, well, I didn't think it's that dramatic, but that's really interesting. But they talked about how the brain, how much more energy the brain has to use to go through a change, to do something different, and how much less energy the brain has to use to just go through a habit.
Like a neural pathway that's already there.
And that's what the brain wants to go, is they want to stick with the habit on things. They don't want the pain. And so again, when we're in our comfort zone, in our current state, that's where we are today. We know what we're doing. We're good at it, whatever. But we're in our current state, and a change is introduced. It's kicking it off. At some level, there's pain, hence the resistance. All that stuff starts to fall in place, which is really, I think interesting. So we got to, again, as leaders, we can't be surprised by that. We got to understand that. We need to have a strategy to move people past that into success.
And, everybody has, just like we say, there are certain people that are risk averse or taking risk. I think that same thing applies. There are certain people that manage change better than others.
Yep.
It has to do with our wiring. Yep. Or maybe past experiences.
It is interesting, when you think about it, just from a pure habit standpoint, a very very disciplined individual.
You?
But but almost to the point too, it's don't change my habits.
Yeah.
Where other people, I think it's hard. I coach people on your habits. Change your disciplines.
Yeah.
So whether they're good habits or bad habits, they're hard to change.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point too. I was thinking of when you're talking was that it could be a change. It could be an actual change we desire.
Yeah.
We know that this is better for me. I need to go this direction. I can see all the reasons why I should go this way. Still
hard.
It's still hard, because I go back to your construction thing. You can almost drive to work on the route you always go on, and almost close your eyes.
Autopilot.
Or you could at least kind of laze off and be thinking about whatever, because you know exactly where you're going. But if it's a brand new route, you're constantly looking around. All the energy you're using to try to figure out where do I go.
True story today. It took me about a week, but I finally figured out a different way. This morning I had 1,000 things on my mind.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I took my old path and I got down there. I'm like, I cannot believe I did this. I have to go around.
Double frustrated.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Rob, while we got to kind of wrap up here, but do you have any, where is somebody out there that's intrigued by this and wants to learn more about change management? Any things that you could direct them to go look at or to learn? I mean, you taught us ADKAR, which is a industry standard approach.
In ADKAR, you can grab a book on Amazon or wherever titled ADKAR, ADKAR.
It's an acronym for processes through change.
Yep, it's the 5 building blocks any individual needs to successfully navigate their change journey. So they need awareness, communication. They need awareness, desire, knowledge. They need the ability, know that they have the ability to do it, and it needs to be reinforced. That's a great point a great place to go through, I think, to get that information. But there's a ton of information out there on change and websites and stuff. ProSci is where I'm certified, PROSCI, and you can go to their website and they have a lot of information on that. Always reach out to me too. I'm happy to. And I love talking about this information. So
you're going to be writing a book about change management, right? That's inspired.
Yes,
you.
After I write a book about about my experience with this podcast. That's first.
There you go. I do too. I think it's exciting. I'm a change guy. I like innovation, and so this is exciting to me, and I like talking about it. But I know we got to cut things here short. So Rob, thanks.
You bet.
Really appreciate you coming and joining us today. I know Brett and I and our organization have benefited from your expertise.
Awesome.
We want to encourage you out there, even if you don't have a great guy like Rob nearby that can help you. There are experts that do this, and I'm telling you, the investment that you put into doing this up front will pay huge dividends to the amount of, you're making a big capital investment in some piece of equipment or change in process, and all that money could be flushed down the toilet if your end users don't adopt it. So make yourself smart in this. You'll be glad you did. And again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us on the Skill Work Forum. We appreciate it. As always, if we can help you, if our company can help you navigate change, maybe you're implementing change, you're having trouble trying to figure out how to staff that change that you're trying to do, that's what we do. Reach out to us at skillwork.com. We'd love to talk to you about that. And go out to any place where you get look at this podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Like it, leave us some comments, give us some ideas about what we could put on upcoming podcasts. Until then, God bless and have a great day.
This is Brett Elliott, CEO and co-founder at Skillwork. Prior to starting Skillwork, I spent over 30 years in the food manufacturing space. From literally starting out cleaning the restrooms to becoming the maintenance manager, then the plant manager, to eventually becoming the president and owner, I've seen the manufacturing world from many perspectives. And like many of you, I've seen firsthand the growing need for higher skilled workers, while at the same time experiencing the shortage of this skilled talent. I started Skillwork to address that need. I knew the headhunter and the local temp agency models were not the solution. If you're experiencing the same shortage of talent at your facility, we would love to connect you with our team. Give us a call at 402-447-7058 or visit us online at skillwork.com.